everyone. So with the start of a new month comes a list of more garden tasks that I need to do during that month. Now, as you know, if you're in this area, it's been much warmer than normal. I still feel like the tasks I need to do during March I'm still doing, but everything's like pushed up a few weeks, especially outside. For example, when it comes to pruning, there's a lot of plants that will say prune before breaking dormancy, prune as buds start to swell. And that's already happening when usually it doesn't. So I am starting to feel a bit like, not a lot of garden stress, but a little garden stress where I'm like, I need to do all these things now, whereas usually I have a little bit longer of a grace period before garden activities really start ramping up. I will obviously be doing videos showing these specific tasks, but I like to do a video at the beginning of the month telling you kind of what's coming up, especially if maybe you're a little bit warmer than I am in a higher growing zone. So you might want to do these a little bit before I put the videos out, but I think it's just a nice way to kind of get yourself organized with what to expect for the month of March. So I'm going to go over my specific tasks that I'm going to do this month. I'm also going to include, because I'm a container gardener, might not have to do as many things as other gardeners, but I will include some recommendations from places like Chicago Botanic Garden for other things you might want to be doing this month. So let's go ahead and get started. I think the most highly anticipated item, both for me and for you guys, is starting my seeds inside. So while I have sown cool weather crops outside already, again, slightly earlier than normal, I really don't start any of my warm season plants inside until March, because I don't want to have to take care of very large plants. Like let's say I started something in February that's not going to go out until mid-May. That's 4 months of growth. It's going to be a pretty good sized plant that I'm going to have to pot up, take care of, find space for, and I don't want to have to do that. So my goal is always to time the starting of my seeds where they're not outgrowing the pellets that I start them in, and I can just get them outside when they're ready to go. I'm a gardener that likes to keep tasks as simple as possible, so that is why I like to decrease the amount of steps for any activities that I have to do. So what I'm going to be starting inside this month, I will put up a screenshot of my personal plant schedule. So I will link down below where you can use this spreadsheet for yourself. I have a whole video showing how I use it, but it's a great way to keep myself organized. The first seeds I'm going to be sowing inside are my Gomphrena. These take a little bit longer than the rest of the flowers that I start inside. Last year, I think I gave them 8 weeks and they're still pretty small. So I'm giving them 10 weeks inside. And I'm using May 15th as the last frost date to move them outside. This year, I really don't know what it's going to be like. Maybe I'll be able to move them outside a little bit earlier, but I'm going to start them this first week of March so that they are ready to go. So that's going to be the first round. I have more varieties than I have space for, but I am going to start them all. The great thing is if you start more plants than you can fit in your garden, it's very easy to find someone who's going to take your plants. The other seeds I'm starting inside is basically anything that is kind of in the 6 week plus range. So 6 to 10 weeks before last frost date is kind of the range that I'm working with. So that includes, I think it includes my asters. I think it might include some status. Again, I'll have the screenshot up here so you can see. I know that it's not going to include my zinnias because the zinnias grow so fast that I know they will need to pot up. So those I like to start about 4 weeks. And I also will direct sow some of those outside just so I have backup. Anytime I've direct sown and left it there after last frost, they catch up to the ones I started indoors pretty quickly. But actually, let me show you. So I started this zinnia. This was for the Me TV appearance. So I had some seedlings to show, but this is a zinnia after 3 weeks. It would already be too large to fit in the peat pellets that I normally use to start. I did pop this one up and I'm probably starting at least 40 to 50 zinnia flowers, and I don't want to have to pot all those up. So that's why I only do these 4 weeks before my last frost date. Now, the reason you're seeing only flowers on my list is because any of the vegetables like tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, oh, Penelope's here. Penelope had a vet appointment where she had some teeth removed. So I think she's still feeling, I don't know, a little bit not herself. So come on, Muffy. She has decided to join me on the couch. Yeah, she just seems a little bit off from how she normally is, but I think she's just still in recovery, yeah. All right, so back to what I was saying. Basically, the reason you see flowers on my list and not things like vegetables is because I grow so few vegetables and I'm not really particular about the varieties, that those I just buy as starts. So once they're available at the garden center, that's when I'll pick one up and plant it in my garden. So I think everything that I'm starting from seed is flowers this year. Now, March is also typically the month when I sow my cool weather crops outside, but you've already seen the video where I've started peas, lettuce, and radishes. I'm definitely going to do more rounds of lettuce and radishes in March. So if you haven't sown cool weather crops yet, you can definitely do that in March. Again, depending on your growing zone, you just want to make sure you give them enough time to reach their days to maturity before the weather gets really warm. Next is pruning. I have a bunch of stuff I need to prune. So my goal has been, kind of last year going into this year, is getting more perennials. Why I have issues with perennials is because for me, I can't always guarantee they'll survive outside in a container. So there's a lot of carrying them downstairs, carrying them upstairs. It's definitely more maintenance trying to keep perennials in containers alive than if they were planted in the ground. But the more perennials I have, the more pruning I need to do in the spring. One of the first I'm gonna prune are my raspberries. That's gonna happen here in probably the next week or two. Because that's one that you want to prune, again, kind of before it starts putting out a bunch of new growth, and that might be happening soon. I also have hydrangeas, I have one rose bush, I have my plum tree. Most of those are still relatively small, so I don't think I'm going to do a ton of pruning in terms of like decreasing the size of it, but I am going to look for any broken branches, anything that looks dead, anything that's crossing over one another, just to keep the inside of the plant kind of open and the airflow going through. I'll take you along with me as I do that as well, but I don't think I have as much pruning as someone who has more established perennials in their garden has to do. Next up is fertilizing. I think I am gonna have to fertilize some of my perennials. Again, with raspberries, those like to be fertilized when they start to put out new growth, which I do think will be this month. I will take you through that process as well. If you have any other berries, if you have grapes, if you have blueberries, I just don't happen to have those anymore. I do have strawberries, then you can go ahead and give those some fertilizer for this month. You can use fertilizer specific for those plants, or if you just have kind of an all-purpose 10-10-10 fertilizer, I think that's what I used last year and that works fine. Next is any last minute seed ordering. So I think I just ordered some zinnias and celosia from Floret, which I'm really excited about. I need to be done. I need to be done buying seeds because I have no more space. But if there are still plants that you want and you haven't gotten the seeds yet, since you're probably going to want to be starting them in the next few weeks, go ahead and get those ordered so that they can get to you on time. But again, with some plants, I've just direct sowed, like zinnias, I direct sow sunflowers. So even if you don't get them until after your last frost, you can go ahead and just direct sow them into your beds. But I like to have everything planned and organized ahead of time. Next up is another one that I think I'm gonna do, but I usually don't do this early, is turning my water back on. So as I have things already growing and plants that I'm already moving outside, I need a way to water them. And filling up a watering can indoors is not very efficient. And if it's warm enough for my plants to be growing outside, typically it means it's warm enough for me to turn on the water. So I might turn on the water, hook up my hoses. I won't hook up my drip yet because I won't turn on my drip until I have all the plants in place, because then I know where the emitters need to go. So I won't worry about like my hose splitters or anything like that. I'll probably just hook up the hose directly to the faucet and use that in the meantime. I'm gonna be using my flexible hoses for the first time. So I'm really excited about that. But if I'm gonna have plants out there, I need to have water access. It's just still crazy to me that this is all happening so quickly this year. Speaking of that, I am going to continue carrying out plants from the garage and getting them on the deck. So as a reminder, the reason why I move a lot of my potted plants to the garage is more to protect them from the moisture over winter than the cold weather. A lot of these plants would survive just fine in a pot on my deck, but when the soil stays too moist, the roots rot and it kills them. And I have killed so many plants because of that. So far, overwintering in the garage seems to have worked. The plants are budding out. So I've moved hydrangeas out. I moved my rose bush out. My dahlias will stay in there because it's not warm enough for them yet. My garage is heated. It doesn't stay like warm. It still stays above 35 degrees, but you don't want to put your dahlias like in a shed or in an unheated garage unless you can insulate them really well. But my garage temperature works really well for dahlias. It's just not nearly warm enough yet for those to come out. Those I move inside in April to pre-sprout them, and I'll show you that process when we get to it. What else is in there? All of my bulbs are out. I think maybe just a Regania, and that's it. So I'm gonna get everything except for my dahlias out onto the deck because it's warm enough to do that. I'm gonna continue my garden cleanup. So I have left more branches of annuals in the garden this last year than I have before because I took a class last fall about the importance of pollinators having somewhere to overwinter, bees specifically, but any sort of beneficial insects. And a lot of them like to overwinter inside of stems. So I've left that in the garden, and I don't really want to clean that up until we're consistently in the 50 degrees during the daytime temps. We're not there yet. We're 60 degrees and then 30 degrees and then 40 degrees and then 60 degrees, but we're not at any sort of consistent weather for that yet. So I'm still gonna leave those out there, but when I clean those up, I'll take you along with me as I do that. But I do like the process of cleaning up and getting things kind of emptied out, refreshed, and ready for the new planting season. Refreshing my soil probably won't happen until April, so that I'm probably gonna hold off on, but at least getting everything kind of cleaned up in the garden from last year, that will probably happen later in March. I'm also going to be adding compost to my potted perennials. I'll do that along with applying fertilizer. That's what I do every year as a refresh. I'm not repotting a lot of my plants, so I'm just adding in compost on top and letting that kind of work its way into the soil. I've done that again for multiple years, and my plants seem to still be thriving. So that's what I'm going to continue to do unless someday it stops working, but so far so good. That's going to be every perennial that I have. So my trees, my fruit bushes, hydrangeas, anything that I have is going to get a layer of fresh compost. I'm going to plant some cool season flowers. Now, these flowers, I know a lot of people start them from seed, but again, I don't plant a ton. And flats of pansies are usually pretty cheap, so I'll get those from the garden center. They're not out yet. I think even though the weather's been warmer, the garden centers are still on a normal schedule. So once those become available, I'll grab some and plant them both in the garden here and my front pots on the front stairs. But I don't do a ton. Other than the bulbs, I don't plant a ton of pansies. Oh, and I have pansies coming back from last fall. So I might not even need as many as I normally add to my garden. So let's now look at the Chicago Botanic Gardens list for March. Again, they also have a monthly list, and I feel like their lists apply more to traditional gardeners or people gardening in yards. So first on their list is spring cleaning. So on dry days, remove winter debris from lawn and garden beds, avoid walking on wet soil, remove any burlap screens that you've erected to protect plants, check for broken branches and prune. Check for signs of damage from snow loads or animals. We got barely any snow this year. Any snow that fell didn't really stick around. Again, very, very, very weird winter. Respond to temperature swings. I've responded by going outside in shorts already. But it says zone 5B and 6A hardiness zones can experience volatile weather conditions. Winter thaws with warmer and drier conditions may stress plants. So during winter thaw periods, water evergreens and conifers as needed. Again, with me up here, I'm typically getting like more moisture, like enough moisture that I don't have to water, but also sometimes too much moisture that it could be detrimental to the plant. So I haven't had to water much yet myself. I did water the plants that have been in the garage, but the soil is still moist. I've never watered my bulbs. I have not watered the evergreens because the soil is still moist there. So I don't usually do a lot of watering March, February, March, April. Really, it's not until the temperatures get warmer that I actually have to start watering myself. Fruit trees and shrubs, make sure gardening tools are sharpened. So I just sharpened my tools and cleaned them in January to get them ready because I didn't do it in the fall like I should have before I put them away. So make sure that your tools are ready to be used for the season. Spray trees, routine spraying on healthy trees is probably not necessary, but spray fruit trees or large deciduous trees with dormant oil if aphid, scale, or mites have been a problem in the past. You can apply a bulb booster, so if you do have plants emerging already or bulbs emerging like I do, you can apply a granular fertilizer this month. I think I do have some bulb tone, so maybe I'll give some to mine. I probably should do that like now. I probably will apply a granular fertilizer to those. It's something I've forgotten to do because typically I'm killing my bulbs. They're not successfully growing like they are now. So I do need to remember to do that and add that to my list. Mulch overeager bulbs. Again, my bulbs are definitely overeager, but we haven't had any really severe cold snaps since they've been coming up. So they've been able to tolerate the temperatures, the swings that we've been having, but I do need to keep an eye out. If we do have any cold snaps again that are really, really low temps, I probably will toss the tarp back on them. So that is the Chicago Botanics list. That is my list for the tasks I'm going to be doing this March. And again, I will have detailed videos going over each of these and how to do them, but I just wanted to give you kind of a heads up of everything that's going to be coming this month. So list down below anything else that you're doing, especially if it's something I might have forgotten that I need to do in my garden as well. I love the comments as a place to learn. I have gotten so many helpful tips and advice that I have used in my garden. So definitely share what you're doing as well. And then I will see you in the next video where I start either seeds or pruning, but the garden tasks are starting now. Bye. You feel like saying bye? Probably not. I love you.